Castlerock, the psychological horror thriller, is the 104th thing to find its way from Stephen King's brain to the screen. When someone mentions Stephen King, most people think lowest common denominator horror writer who churns out like a book a month and has never heard of the delete key. But as an actual Stephen King reader, I think about that bar fight in the Fourth Dark Tower novel that I was so invested in I forgot to get off the train. I think about the chills that I get when I just consider the premise of The Long Walk. Despite King's uncanny ability to get into my head and the heads of millions of fans, he's constantly mocked in pop culture.
There's a couple good ones, and then there's just a lot of Tommyknockers out there.
8th grade vocabulary.
For my 307th book, a lamp monster.
You're not even trying anymore, are you?
The general public may have mixed feelings about Stephen King now, but chances are very good he'll go down in history as the Charles Dickens of the 21st century. With almost 60 best-selling novels to his extremely visible name, Stephen King has so many books in circulation he's practically doing Bible numbers. But with so little time spent per book and so many mixed reviews, how could King have a shot at being remembered as an all-time great instead of a middling writer? Perhaps the strongest indication that Stephen King is the Charles Dickens of our time is this 1860s quote about Charles Dickens. According to his contemporary George Eliot, Dickens was enjoying an extravagantly high reputation and being rewarded for his labors both in purse and in credit at an extravagantly high rate. Who, it may be asked, takes Mr. Dickens seriously? Is it not foolish to estimate his melodramatic and sentimental stock in trade gravely? King and Dickens share a lot of attributes: success during their own lives, general popular appeal, and criticisms that they'll be soon forgotten. Dickens was even a similarly prolific publisher, busting out 30 books in his 45-year career. Charles Dickens wrote literary blockbusters like Oliver Twist,
Please, sir, I want some more.
A Christmas Carol, and A Tale of Two Cities, but he also wrote some duds, like The Story of the Goblins Who Stole a Sexton, The Haunted Man and the Ghost's Bargain, and The Story of the Bagman's Uncle. Time has lovingly forgot about those, but George Eliot and others were fully justified in their criticism of some of his works. And this is nothing new. Many authors we now think of as unparalleled geniuses were taken to the cleaners by their contemporary critics. Two literary greats, Edgar Allan Poe and Oscar Wilde, were critically panned and died without a penny to their name. It surprises a lot of people to learn that most Stephen King books aren't really horror. He also writes westerns, science fiction, dystopian futures, psychological thrillers, and more. The scary elements of his books earned him the Master of Horror Honorarium, but that really says more about his ability to manipulate and amplify a reader's emotions, and fear being a powerfully visceral experience. In my favorite Stephen King novel, The Gunslinger, he spends pages describing this character named Roland of Gilead, who is this impossibly badass cowboy, and it talks about these beautiful wooden-handled guns, and we are just so ready for Roland to pull those things out and use those on anything, and then he tortures you for 80 pages, and Roland doesn't touch a gun, and we are like, come on, just shoot one into the air. I don't care, just shoot one up. And just when you are ready to give up on the book, he has to mow down an entire town of assailants, and it is so awesome. What he lacks in acrobatic sentence structure, he funnels into connecting with his readers. He may not have found abounding love from book reviewers, but given the fact that every book he's ever written has been a bestseller, he certainly has struck the kind of chord with popular culture that keeps an author working and relevant. From a strictly numbers perspective, Stephen King beats every other famous author in that cultural meter stick we call Google search terms. Now, quick quiz. Who wrote Memoirs of a Geisha? 50 Shades of Grey? To Kill a Mockingbird? The works will be remembered for a long time, but the authors, Arthur Golden, E.L. James, and Harper Lee, by the way, tend to fall by the wayside. In the same way that Dickens deserved criticism for the Goblin Story, a lot of King criticism is absolutely warranted. I mean, the trucks become evil and kill everyone, the mist becomes evil and kills everyone, cell phones become evil and turn people into zombies. Not even Stephen King stands by all of his work. When asked about his writing quality in an interview with the Rolling Stone, he famously said, "The Tommyknockers is an awful book. The book is about 700 pages long, and I'm thinking there's probably a good 350-page novel in there." But longevity doesn't seem to be about being a critical darling. It seems much more tied to consistently connecting with an audience, something Stephen King has done possibly better than anyone. He is an intergenerational cultural touchstone, and references to him can be found in comic books, cartoons, board games, politics, rap, stand-up comedy, commercials, the list goes on. But will his work stand the test of time? Well, one answer is they already have. He wrote It back in 1986, and more than 30 years later, it made $327 million at the box office. He set The Dead Zone in Castlerock back in 1979, and another 4 Stephen King novels took place in this fictional location before 1985. Time has a way of rounding off the jagged edges. As Stephen King passes from publishing whirlwind to dearly departed author, he'll almost certainly go down as an American legend. And no one will ever remember that he once wrote a book called Dreamcatcher, where these feces monsters ate people while they were on the toilet. Look it up. Or, actually, don't.